Hello, fake footballers, and welcome to draft. Whoa, that's loud, isn't it? Draft video number 2. My name is Greg Smith, and I will be drafting from the 11th position in an ESPN 12-team league. I'm going to turn off that ESPN default sound so we don't have to hear the football chime every time someone jumps into the league. As I said, I have the 11th pick overall, and this is a 12-teamer. ESPN offers a wide variety of 8, 10, 12-team leagues, auction, snake style. I was surprised there weren't more 12-team leagues to choose from as I was going through trying to find a league to jump into with enough time to get myself set up to record this video. Anyway, the draft begins in a minute and 15 seconds, and when that happens, I will be right back. Alright, welcome back. We've got the first pick coming up momentarily here from Team Macus. We could take some time to appreciate some of the other fine team names in here, like the Bad Boys, the Miami Hopefuls, Ravens Suck, Team Beaver Spleen. A good fantasy team name is not to be underestimated. First pick was Ray Rice, by the way, over Arian Foster. You don't see that very often, but I think you can make the argument for Rice. He's probably a little healthier. Oh, MJD, second overall. Man, these public leagues are wacky sometimes. And then Foster goes with the third pick. I'm sure that player was very excited to end up with Foster third overall. In my previous video on Yahoo, I started off by saying I hope Aaron Rodgers makes it to me at pick number 6. And that was because I wanted to see what a team would look like if I drafted Rodgers in the first round, like if I could get running backs that I liked and wide receivers that I liked. With the 11th pick in this draft, I'm kind of just going to wait and see who's available. I would not mind picking up one of the top QBs. Speaking of which, Aaron Rodgers just went 4th overall in this draft. And as usual with these draft videos, I'm going to be going off of our staff rankings. I might try and record a video later this week with just my own rankings, but I need to update those and make that post before I can make that happen. So until then, we're stuck with the whole staff, Jeff Rubach, Jack Gresham, and myself. All of our rankings mashed into one amalgamation. So since Rodgers got picked, LaShawn McCoy went 5th. Calvin Johnson 6th, and Tom Brady 7th, and then Drew Brees 8th. So QB, I'm probably not going to be taking that. There are 2 picks left before I go here. Chris Johnson is the top-ranked ESPN player, and I would be pretty happy to pick him here. If not, I'd probably go with Darren McFadden, or I guess I could go wide receiver. I kind of documented in the last draft how I don't really like taking a wide receiver in the first round, but towards the end of the first round in a 12-team league, I think you can make the justification. With all that said, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go running back here because if the guy at the turn looks like he's on auto pick, he hasn't joined the league, it looks like. His little helmet on this top section is kind of faded, or I don't know, in the shadows, I guess. So if I pick, let's say McFadden gets to me here, and I take McFadden, he's going to end up with Larry Fitzgerald and Andre Johnson, and then I'll be able to choose between, I don't know, either another running back, Forte or Murray or Lynch, or one of the other top wideouts, Roddy White, Craig Jennings. Anyway, Marshawn Lynch was just selected 10th overall, and so I'm going to take McFadden here. Let me double check that against our rankings. We've got McFadden 5th overall here, right ahead of Aaron Rodgers and Calvin Johnson. The next best player available, according to our rankings, is Jimmy Graham. We have him ranked 11th, and he should make it back to me with my next pick. I'm actually pretty excited to get Darren McFadden this late in round 1. I might have taken Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers over McFadden if he had been available, but the way these drafts usually go, especially in public leagues where a lot of people often don't really know what they're doing or just are drafting for fun and trying to get the players they like and the players they want to root for will often take those quarterbacks a little higher than most fantasy, I don't know, gurus or experts or whatever you want to call us are. I think the way the auto draft works on ESPN is that if a person hasn't joined the league, it'll take the full amount of time off their draft clock and then auto pick for them and put them on auto pick until they show up. So the first pick will take a long time here as the clock runs down, and then his next pick will fire instantly after that. And unless he set up a queue or pre-rank some players, which I highly doubt, I don't think you can do that ahead of time in these quick-firing draft lobby leagues. He's going to end up with the top 2 wide receivers here, Fitzgerald and Andre Johnson, which is probably not the best way to start out your draft this year. So, yep, Fitzgerald and Johnson, it's back to me. I am trying to decide between Forte, Murray, Jimmy Graham, maybe a quarterback. I could take Stafford or Cam Newton here. Let's consult the rankings. We've got Jimmy Graham ranked 11th. I have him 15th overall behind guys like Trent Richardson, behind. Who else do I have ahead of him? I've got Forte and Charles ahead of him. With the news on Richardson and the fact that I took him in the last video, I'm definitely not going to make that pick right now. You know, I talked about how I've never done the tight end thing. So I'm gonna take Jimmy Graham here. And we'll just see how it goes. I mean, this is more for practice than anything else. I want to see what kind of team I can put together taking Jimmy Graham in the second round. Despite the fact that my rankings would have me taking Forte or DeMarco Murray, or maybe not Murray. I don't know if I have Murray ranked ahead of Graham. I probably don't. I've got... Oh, I do. I have Graham 15th. I have Murray 13th. So, there you go. Going against my own rankings, going with the staff rankings, and kind of just trying to see what kind of team I can put together here with tight end in the second round. And with that said, I will be back right now for the next pick. Alright, so I decided to come back a little early before my pick and tell you who kind of rounded out the second round after I took Graham. After I took Graham, Matt Forte and Rob Gronkowski went, then DeMarco Murray, Roddy White, Jamal Charles, Adrian Peterson, Trent Richardson, Matthew Stafford, Cam Newton, Frank Gore. So the top-ranked players at the beginning of the third round available by ESPN's rankings are Greg Jennings, Mike Wallace, Wes Welker, Hakeem Nicks, AJ Green, Eli Manning, Victor Cruz, Ryan Matthews with his new injury news, which, man, I think that broke the day after I did the last video. And to start out this round, let's see, Frank Gore, Wes Welker were just selected. Anyway, I will be back with my third pick in a moment. All right, so welcome back. There are 3 picks before I'm coming up here in the third round. And there's one auto drafter ahead of me, but he's not like an absent auto drafter. He probably just has some sort of queue set up with players that he would draft. And the guy at the turn after me is still definitely an auto draft. This round, the players who have been taken after Wes Welker were AJ Green, Steven Jackson, Greg Jennings, Michael Turner, Fred Jackson, Mike Wallace, and Julio Jones was just drafted. I was kind of hoping Julio would fall to me. But with that said, there's still a lot of other wide receivers I like here. Victor Cruz, Brandon Marshall, Hakeem Nicks. Although I won't be able to get Nicks necessarily if this person drafting ahead of me is just on standard auto draft. The other non-wide receiver players at the top of the ESPN rankings are Eli Manning, Michael Vick, Darren Sproles, Ahmad Bradshaw, and Ryan Matthews. I will probably take Ryan Matthews if he's available here. I understand there's a lot of risk in that pick, especially considering I drafted Darren McFadden overall, and he's never really been the picture of health. But in a 12-team league where you have a flex spot that you can start a running back in, where you can ostensibly start 3 running backs every week, I want to be starting RBs. And even if Matthews misses 2 weeks to start the season, I still think that's a player I want on my team. After Julio Jones, Brandon Marshall, and Ahmad Bradshaw were selected. So now I'm looking at Nix, Manning, Cruz, Matthews, Vic, Jordy Nelson, Steve Smith, Des Bryant, Darren Sproles at the top of the rankings here. The auto drafter here, if I take Matthews, will end up with Eli Manning and Hakeem Nicks. And man, that would be a pretty rough start to a draft. I mean, I understand you have 3 top flight wide receivers and a pretty good quarterback, but no running backs out of the first 4 rounds. It's pretty rough. If I take Matthews here, I'll take a wide receiver after the turn, which either means I'll take Cruz or Nelson. So let's just look at the rankings now and figure out which one of those guys we like more. I've got Cruz 5th and Nelson 10th, and Nelson is way down the staff rankings. I mean, the other option here is if I want to play it safe, is to just take both of those wide receivers back to back here and let someone else worry about Matthews. I just don't like the spot that puts me in a running back going forward, and there are plenty of wide receiver values to be had later. So I'm going to take Matthews here, and then I will get Cruz or... yeah, Cruz here coming back to me. So we're not going to see Jordy Nelson or any of those guys come back to us. But next round, hopefully maybe pick up another wide receiver or a running back for the flex. Maybe a quarterback. We'll see what happens. This Jimmy Graham pick is kind of throwing me off. The more I think about it, the more I wish that would have been a running back. So these are the lessons you learn when you do these mock drafts. So I am going to take Victor Cruz, and I'll be back at the end of the round to recap the other picks. All right, we're at the end of round 4 now, and since I took Victor Cruz, the next few picks were Tony Romo, Michael Vick, Steve Smith, Jordy Nelson, Peyton Manning, Des Bryant, Jermichael Finley, Willis McGahee, Darren Sproles, and Reggie Bush. That rounds out the 4th round, and looking at the ESPN rankings at this point, the top guys are Marquez Colston, Brandon Lloyd, Miles Austin, Roy Halu, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, Vincent Jackson, Jonathan Stewart, Percy Harvin, and Antonio Gates. The fact that you can have Gates in the 4th round, or the 5th round in this case, in a 12-team league, is kind of evidence as to why you don't necessarily need to take Jimmy Graham or Rob Gronkowski in the 2nd round of your fantasy drafts. As this draft is playing out, I really wish that I would have just taken another running back when I took Graham, whether it was DeMarco Murray or Matt Forte. There were just a lot of, I think, better options for my lineup in general, because there is more value to be had at the receiving positions, tight end and wide receiver, later in the draft. And considering that the flex, you do have a flex spot in these ESPN leagues where you can start a tight end, a wide receiver, or a running back, that is a new feature, I think, in the ESPN standard leagues this year, by the way. But the fact that exists where you can start 3 running backs means that 2nd rounder, even though I was getting what I felt was pretty good value on Jimmy Graham, I would have rather had a running back at this point. Anyway, looking towards my next pick, I would like to get a running back for that flex spot, but I wouldn't be opposed to taking a wide receiver or quarterback depending upon who's there. The QB is available now. Don't really excite me all that much. I mean, Matt Ryan, I think, is the top-ranked ESPN quarterback, and I like Matt Ryan a lot this year. If you miss out on Julio Jones and you can get in on Matt Ryan and just kind of absorb some of those points by osmosis, then I think you're in a good spot. But because the guy drafting at the turn already has Eli Manning, I probably won't take Ryan if he falls to me here in the 5th. With that said, I'm looking wide receiver or running back, and I prefer to get a running back. So let's look at the rankings. I was looking through this earlier while I had the recording on pause, and Doug Martin is really buried in the ESPN rankings. He's behind guys like C.J. Spiller, Mark Ingram, Michael Bush. I'm not sure if the ESPN rankers are just a big believer in what's his name, in LeGarrette Blount or what, but that seems a little too low to me, and I think I'm probably going to take him here. I understand that we can wait and see if he falls to the next round, but there's probably at least one other drafter who's savvy enough to know that Doug Martin probably shouldn't last into the 7th round. So with that said, if I'm looking at running back, it's basically Doug Martin versus the law firm or the Daily Show. I would much rather have Doug Martin than Stephen Ridley, and I think I'll take Matt Ryan on the backside of this, assuming this guy drafting at the turn doesn't take a second quarterback. So anyway, Doug Martin, welcome to the team. I should note that the guy drafting at the turn after me is not an auto pick anymore. He finally showed up for the draft. Oh, and look at this. I did the bye week thing again. Doug Martin and Darren McFadden both have the same bye week. But considering that Doug Martin's my flex, that's not as much of a problem, because I'm going to draft at least one more running back, probably 2 or 3 more running backs, and they'll be able to fill in week 5 when both of these guys are out, and I can put anything in the flex, whether it be a wide receiver or something else. Wow, this guy drafting at the turn took another wide receiver. He just drafted Miles Austin to his bench. Man, you need some running backs, dude. Better jump on that. Let's look at how some of the other teams are constructed. Beaver Spleen went Romo, Lynch, Forte, Brandon Lloyd, Ahmad Bradshaw. It seems like a pretty solid start. Brandon Lloyd's been getting pumped up by a lot of fantasy writers this year. Actually, let me do a quick perusal of the other teams and see who doesn't have a quarterback yet. Because it's possible that Matt Ryan might make it back to me. So there's one team without a quarterback. There is one. And looking at the other options here, the next quarterbacks available are Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Schaub, Jay Cutler, RG3, Josh Freeman. I like Matt Ryan enough, like more than those guys enough to just pick him here and hope that I can find some value at wide receiver and backup running back in what is essentially 2 rounds, because I'm drafting so close to the end here. So I'm going to take Matt Ryan, and I'll come back to recap the rest of the round 6 picks from my opponents in a minute. Okay, so after Matt Ryan was drafted, Percy Harvin, Stevie Johnson, Eric Decker, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, Javid Best, Robert Meacham, Stephen Ridley, the Ravens defense, and the Bears defense were all selected. I don't know if the 49ers defense went yet. I guess it did. Oh, no, it didn't. I'm surprised that 2 defenses were drafted before then. Surprisingly enough, the team called Ravens Suck did not draft the Ravens defense, if you can imagine. And Sean Green just was drafted to round out the 7th round. So the top-ranked players now are Jonathan Stewart, Jeremy Maclin, Antonio Brown, Ben Tate, Jason Witten, D'Angelo Williams, Isaac Redman, Michael Bush, Pierre Garçon. A lot of these guys are pretty good values at this point, I'd say. I like Jeremy Maclin, I like Antonio Brown, even Jonathan Stewart in the 7th round. You can't really go wrong with that. Further down the rankings, there are some more pretty decent upside wide receivers. Denarius Moore, Malcolm Floyd, Torrey Smith is down here. Hopefully, when it gets back to my pick here, there will be one of these wide receivers or running backs available, like Isaac Redman. I would love to get. I kind of doubt Antonio Brown or Maclin will make it back to me, but you never know. I'd also look at Toby Gerhart at that spot if pickings are a little more slim. I do think he's going to be the Minnesota starter for a lot of the season while AP is recovering from his torn knee tendons or ligaments, whatever you want to call them. And I don't know. We'll see who's available when it gets back to me. I'll be right back.